Welcome to the Dynamics of Everyday Life, where we demystify some tricky concepts and get to know ourselves a little bit better. Welcome back to the show, everyone. At the time of production, it's December. Everything feels slightly feral, and I have no clue what is happening when. My mum recently asked me when my son breaks up for the Christmas holidays, which I then had to Google. I'm barely keeping up with today, let alone the academic calendar. Now, as you know, I loathe most social media memes, but there's one floating around that I can genuinely relate to. It says something like, "I hate it when people ask if I'm ready for Christmas. I'm barely ready for today." Spot on. And yet, despite this collective chaos, we start to get those posts. Who do you want to be in 2026? I'm not sure who I want to be this weekend. I mean, someone with a consistent laundry routine would be a great start. Anyway, all of this has reminded me of A1's pop classic, Same Old Brand New You. For those of you who weren't listening to 90s music the first time round, where were you? A1 were basically a low-rent Backstreet Boys with frosted tips and curtains hairstyles. They had a couple of hits, and my personal favourite was Same Old Brand New You. It's about someone insisting they've changed and absolutely not behaving like they have. Now, we've all been there, and let's be honest, we've all been both characters. Because this is the human condition in a nutshell. We love a pretend fresh start. New diary, new gym leggings, same ancient emotional patterns trudging along underneath. Now, New Year is the obvious moment for the annual reinvention, but it's hardly the only time we do this. Who hasn't reorganised the cutlery drawer after reading an article on Feng Shui, only to declare yourself spiritually renewed for about 10 minutes? Or maybe you've said, very dramatically, "Right, that's it, I'm not responding to his or her messages anymore." And then 4 hours later, you're deep in the chat, sending voice notes and emoji-laden nonsense. Perhaps you've convinced yourself that a brand new skincare regime is basically the gateway to being a whole new person. Absolutely no idea who would do that. Not me at all. No, thank you. Or there's my personal favourite, clearing out the wardrobe thinking, I will become that elegant, polished, poised version of myself who always knows what she's wearing. When what actually happens is, I stare at a very empty wardrobe and think, this needs filling. When you think about it, brand new me energy, it's just old habits dressed up in a sparkly jacket. So why do we do this? Well, here's where the psychodynamics come in. This is our defence mechanisms dressed up as self-improvement. Denial, it's a classic. I don't want to think about everything I'm avoiding, so I'll join a gym. That'll fix it. No, it won't. What changes is your bank balance. Monthly payments steadily going out in direct proportion to your rising self-loathing as you don't go. It's the repetition compulsion in action. We recreate the same patterns while loudly insisting that this time will be different. And of course we repeat, because nothing underneath has changed. We're still acting out the same old internal dramas. We've just got better leggings on. So let's have a think about transformation, and here we're talking about the fantasy versus the reality. This time of year practically marinates us in fantasy. Shops, films, adverts, everything whispers, reinvent yourself, be new, be shiny. But what is actually happening? Well, to be honest, it's emotional avoidance, plain and simple. Our unconscious is realistically saying to us, sure, You buy the new planner, darling. I'll still be here calling the shots. Real change is hard work. Not glamorous montage-style hard work, but the tedious, internal, uninstagrammable kind. If only a new moisturiser or pair of jeans could transform our lives. But no, they can't. Because true change isn't on the shelf at Space NK. It starts with you catching yourself in the act, with us noticing our patterns, and with us pausing long enough to ask, what is actually going on here? Lasting change? Well, that looks less like the final scene of a Richard Curtis film and more like, this is usually the point where I would snap. But somehow, I've managed not to. So now let's talk about coaching. And before anyone calls me a hypocrite, yes, I have been posting about not wanting to be the same old coach next year. But that's about something far more specific, the internal work that coaches need to do. Because I see this dynamic in coaching all the time. A new tool arrives, a new model, a shiny CPD certificate, and we think, fabulous, this is going to shift everything. Except, if the underlying patterns don't shift, they won't. You can tick whatever boxes you want on the latest assessment, but if you're still working superficially, you may as well be doing a Cosmo quiz from 1993. Mostly A's? Congratulations, you fancy Brad Pitt. Well, no, I don't. I'm sure he's a lovely man. Just does absolutely nothing for me. And here's the thing, not all coach training is created equal. You can collect certificates like Pokemon cards, but if the training isn't helping you grow internally, your emotional capacity, your tolerance for discomfort, your ability to actually see your own patterns, if it's not looking at that, then nothing truly shifts. The right training doesn't just give you tools, it develops you as a practitioner. And that's why the work I teach is so different. Psychodynamics isn't about surface level technique. It's about who you become when you coach. You're doing the work not just for your clients, but for you too. So what does genuine newness look like in a practitioner? Well, the things it includes are staying with discomfort. We need to be able to be comfortable with not knowing and with the uncomfort that's in the room. Noticing our own reactions. Naming patterns as well instead of dancing around them when we can kind of feel something's there but we don't actually say it. And allowing depth rather than rescuing. Now, we all go through this as we learn to be a coach. There is no judgment here, but this is where the real evolution happens. Not in the stationery aisle at WH Smith. My invitation to you this week is for you to consider where in your life have you been frantically trying to invent a new you, only to find yourself right back where you started. Maybe you thought a new haircut or outfit would transport you into the person you wanted to be. And it didn't. And as always, give yourself some grace. You don't actually need to reinvent yourself with a new soundtrack. You need to understand the patterns that you've been dancing to. Otherwise, well, you're just a 90s boy band chorus on repeat. Now, if you can't wait for next week's episode, come along to my weekly LinkedIn Live sessions, now also streaming on Facebook. My IT skills are improving at an alarming rate. I'm usually live on Mondays at 2:30 and the recordings go up on YouTube shortly after, unless it's bank holiday, in which case I will be on the sofa watching James Bond. I'm going to take a bit of a break over Christmas. Got to go to a few pantos and all that. Oh yes, I have. But I'll be back with those in the new year. Just before we close, Essential Psychodynamics for Coaches starts again in January. The first 2 rounds have been brilliant. Been really thoughtful coaches, great discussions, proper depth work we've been looking at. People are already signing up. So if you don't want to miss out, and quite frankly, who would want to miss out, drop me a DM or an email. And if a full course feels like a bit too much right now, I've launched Psychodynamic Nuggets. This is 5 on-demand sessions, each one a deep dive that you can do at your own pace. If you're interested in those, send me a message and I'll sort the link out for you. And as always, please go at whatever speed feels right for you. If you'd like to have a chat with me about how to work with me either as a trainer, a coach, a supervisor or a mentor, then the link is in the show notes. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Dynamics of Everyday Life. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. As well as producing this podcast, The Dynamics of Everyday Life has lots more psychodynamic fun going on, and you can find out more at dynamicsofeveryday.life.